Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights podcast.
Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night. In today's episode of Obsidian Nights, where we go through A Song of Ice and Fire chapter by chapter, I have one of my good pals, my good friends, back on, Justin Thomas from Top Shelf Fandom. Hey, Justin, how you doing?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm good. So today, we're going to be talking about Catelyn 4. I wanted to make a really quick announcement that starting this Sunday, August the 30th, I will be doing live streams on my channel at 2 p.m. They will be House of the Dragon focused, Winds of Winter, and they will be produced by Top Shelf Fandom.
And I can't be more excited for it because you are the leading source of A Song of Ice and Fire proper knowledge. And I always have such great off-air conversations, and I hope to have a on-air great conversation right here with you about it. And I think that we're really going to present a great visual and change up the game a little bit and maybe make the stakes a little bit higher for what it takes to have a professional product displayed to people. And who better than Gray Area to be leading on it here. So I can't wait for that juice. But yeah, Catelyn, everybody's favorite Catelyn in A Song of
everybody's
right?
favorite Karen. Everyone's favorite Karen of Westeros. Not my favorite at all.
No.
Is she your favorite?
No, well, she's the favorite Catelyn. I can't think of another Catelyn at the time. So she's the worst and the best.
Yeah, like the thing about Catelyn is you can not like Catelyn as a person. Like I think we've talked about that on a few other Catelyn chapters. Like you cannot like her, but her chapters though, a lot of them are like powerhouse chapters that like a lot of stuff is going on. Like Rob's whole POV is in Catelyn, in Catelyn's POV, like Rob's POV. Rob's whole perspective is in Catelyn's POV. Stannis, Renly, like you get all of this. Red Wedding, Lysa, the Eerie, like all through Catelyn.
Well, we have this ongoing narrative about what it means to follow somebody in the war. And a big misconception, and I've spoken about this before, is George R.R. Martin being anti-war. Of course, he's anti-war in the sense of he doesn't think that you should always go to war, but he is not a straight pacifist. So he believes that certain wars, he's spoken about World War II as being something he thought was a righteous war. If that was Vietnam, the war in which he was called to duty for, and he served in a different way. He served for the offices, I believe, in Canada somewhere. But nonetheless, we have Catelyn. She is so important to us, and we don't like her for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into it here. But because she experiences the most change and the most, I would say, conflict within her perspective, which I think is very important. And we see this here in this chapter. So Catelyn is somebody that, yes, we really, across the board, nobody's a huge fan of Catelyn, and I will try to voice some reasonable reasons to accept her and think, hey, at least let's have some empathy for her. But I like this chapter. I think that we are introduced into the whole King's Landing politicking with Varys and Littlefinger, and a lot of things that you're going to voice really well. So Catelyn's not the best person, but she might be the best perspective.
Yeah, she is, I would say, one of the best POV chapters. And between her and Davos is really good. But I mean, Kat is up there because she just has so much stuff going on. So yeah. So basically in the beginning of this chapter, we're like, we don't have to go through like word for word what's going on, but I'll just like summarize because we don't need to go through like Sir Roderick vomiting and being seasick and shit.
Can I touch on that though? Can I actually touch on that? There is an aspect of masculinity that is played in this actual chapter. Meaning we are looking at somebody as, are they masculine? And he apologizes to Catelyn, right? Because he has to even shave his whiskers, his legendary whiskers, because he is so seasick. And they have taken the Storm Dancer, I believe it's a Tyroshi ship that has a Toroshi. So we're introduced. This is a little bit of world building by George as well, which is important. But I actually do think that him vomiting over the edge, it's not for nothing. It's to show that he wants to be this valiant hero, this interpretation or depiction of what knighthood is, right?
Yeah.
Or what a chivalric man is. And he feels a little bit weak, right? Like, because he goes, I'm sorry, my lady. Like, he feels ashamed of himself because he should be strong in all aspects. And I see a subversion of this masculinity throughout the story, right? Like, this is a very skilled fighter, but he's still getting seasick. Hey, he's a human being.
Yeah, like toxic masculinity is a big thing in A Song of Ice and Fire. I think George did that on purpose. Like call Drogo, for instance. Like there's this whole thing where you're
don't clean my wounds.
Yeah, like did Miri Mazdor really poison him, or was he just such a toxic man that he just didn't listen to her? Because he didn't listen to anything that she said. Like all of the instructions that she gave him, like don't drink, don't do this, like he did all of that shit. That he did exactly the opposite of what she told him to do. So it's like, did she really poison you, or did you die because you didn't follow fucking directions?
You're in the medical field, right? So if you sent somebody home with a list of instructions and they broke their cast off, poured salt in their wounds and any other toxic thing, and then they came back and said Gray's a witch, I mean, you'd be like, well, I mean, just your inadequacies and obviously you're incompetent. You're an inept person. Yeah. So I think that's important to take note of.
It does come up a lot. Like like even with Robert, like part of Robert Baratheon and his beef with Rhaegar was about, it wasn't really about, he couldn't have loved Lyanna, you know what I mean? Because he didn't really know her like that. And Ned even says, like, you knew the beauty of her, but you didn't know the iron underneath, or something like that. Something like to that effect. And it's like, it wasn't really that the fact that he was so madly in love with her that he started this war. It was more so that another man took what he deemed was his, and it's just toxic.
Yeah, I think it's more, and this is continuing, I would say narrative throughout the story, is the loving of the idea of something. Roderick loves the idea of this masculine protector.
Yeah.
Robert loves this idea of this very powerful man with a lady of high birth, right? Noble birth. So it's all this deception of what lays under. So Ned, what he speaks to is true. You didn't know her.
Mm-hmm. And Sir Roderick, like, in the opposite of toxic masculinity is that Catelyn, like in the opposite of Sir Roderick, like Catelyn is very courteous. She's very ladylike. Like even though Sir Roderick is like, I'm sorry, my lady, like, I'm sorry, I was a wimp and I got seasick and I'm throwing up all over the place. And she's like, well, you got me here and that's all that matters. And she gave each one of the oars, the oarmen, I think it was 60 oarmen, she gave each one of them a silver dragon. Like, she didn't have to do any of that, but it's all a part of like her ladyship.
Her courtesy and her candor is noted in this.
Yes,
it is noted. And we'd have to think, I guess the best juxtaposition would be Cersei, correct? Like, how would Cersei have treated Sir Roderick as a hand? It's pretty much, how do you treat the help? Yeah. Right? If you have help, how do you treat them? Having help, to be clear, for my sake, is not good. But yeah, how would you treat them? And it seems like Catelyn's pretty, she's pretty understanding of their plight, and she's pretty understanding of their situation, because it's noted highly in this episode or this chapter, in which she is very gracious.
Yeah, she is. And I mean, she was raised like that. And that's basically how ladies are raised in Westeros. Like, even with Cersei, like, Cersei is a bitch, but at the end of the day, Cersei has a lot of false courtesies about her. Like, she does things like this one chapter, like, that Cersei's in. She's sitting on the throne for Tommen, and she is, I think, the Iron Bank has came and they want to talk to Cersei, and he's like, I've been here 6 days, and she was like, well, wait a seventh. 7 is sacred to our gods. It's so she's being courteous, but she's being a bitch at the same time. And Catelyn isn't really like that. Like, she's a bitch to Jon, of course, or like other people. But when she's dealing with the help, or like Maester Lewin or Sir Roderick or the oarsmen, like she's she's courteous.
Well, yeah, and I think that this speaks to, a lot of her issues with Catelyn is that between her and Cersei, it's clear when she's putting on a mask, right?
Yeah.
Just playing the game, which recognized game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good for her. But at the same time, Catelyn, it's a little bit of a conflict for us as a reader because we know she has treated this child we just cannot accept. Like, we hate how she treated Jon.
Yeah.
At the same time, we do look at her plight, if you can, and we see a little bit of, I would say there's rightful empathy for Catelyn as a character. Robb was born in Riverrun. Upon my research on this chapter, I did not remember that, admittedly, that Robb was literally born in Riverrun and she brought him to Winterfell and Jon was already there. Yeah. So we have to look at Love and Duty, a ongoing, and I promise I won't get into this, but a little bit of a Cain narrative is part of the philosophy of the show is, can you have love without duty? Are you obligated to your duty? Are you obligated by some moral compass? And she comes back to somebody that is said to be a bastard son of the man in which she is married. And she's come from the Riverlands and she's brought the heir. So also look at it as if you brought your son or your daughter that was going to be CEO of a company, right? If they're firstborn. So there's this obligation of duty as well within that of like, that's also a threat. So like, there's a lot of things. And I think it's just we just cannot really deal with the fact, and rightfully so, she was, aggressive towards Jon, because we say to be aggressive towards a child is
you have to be a bitch.
Yeah, right. Like, so that does trump it. I'm not saying like, because I don't like Catelyn. I just straight up don't. But like, I tried to find reasons. I'm like, oh man, she had all these things from the South that she left behind, and Ned did a few things for her. But at the same time, man, it's like.
I think a part of why I don't like her, like, to be honest, like I've already talked about the personal reasons on the Jon 2 podcast, Jon 1, Jon 2. Mm-hmm. I've already talked about like the personal reasons on the Jon 2 episode. But besides that, it's like, so yeah, characters like Jamie pushed a child out the window. It is like, I can like Jamie because so many people hate him anyway, but Catelyn is a well-loved character by a lot of people.
Inside the story, she's very well liked, right?
Right. So it's like she does all these things and she gets away with it. So that's why I don't like her. Like, if she had to answer for the things that she's done and she had to pay like a price, like Jamie lost his hand, if she had to pay these prices, then yeah, I would be, I would probably like her more, because I like her and I dislike her. I don't understand her when it comes to Jon.
Yeah.
And it's just because me as a woman, I just can't relate to that. Like, as a woman, like, if I'm going to stay in a relationship with a man that had a baby outside of my marriage, then I'm going to love that baby. But if I'm not, then I would leave. And I guess it's kind of like, well, I guess you can't really apply like modern day
conventions to
this story, but because I don't know if she had a choice to leave, but like, if I didn't have a choice to leave, then I would have to accept the child. I could treat my husband like shit, but I wouldn't treat the child like shit. You know what I mean?
Because he is a victim in this. He is blameless. Like, that is why we have so much, angst towards Catelyn within all of these chapters, is that we can't understand why the issue isn't with Ned. Yeah. She is so true to Ned, but we have to look at moral duty and love and stuff like that. And it is a contemporary, take on a time in which we do not live. This is somewhat the 12th and 13th century. But at the same time, yeah, I think that with every good character, we can find some empathetic perspective of, I don't think we're necessarily meant to be in love with Catelyn, to be honest. I think that, we see the dynamic. We're not stupid. It's not like us that don't like Catelyn or like, oh, we're just these evil people. Like, oh, because great, in myself involved, like I would not be happy with that situation whatsoever. But at the same time,
and then Ned also needs to, like, Ned bears responsibility as well because he allowed that to happen. So, like, there's a lot of different parts, you know?
Oh, there's a lot of moving parts. And what I find interesting about this, besides the fact that and this would be very much so your prowess, this is Bran's vision for the first time because he sees them going past, is it the brick?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk, like, because we get like kind of confirmation of what this kid is seeing, because I try to take myself out of these.
He's seeing real-time events. So what he's seeing is like real-time events. It's like some kind of weird, like weirwood he's spread all over the world at one time, kind of on some different plane than everyone else. So she's on the boat, she's going to King's Landing, she has the dagger, she's clutching it, like keeps checking her pocket to see if it's there. And I get it, but I don't. Okay, so like, why leave your kids? Like, family, duty, honor. Littlefinger even tells her this, like, her words are family, duty, honor. So what she should be doing is staying in Winterfell, like her husband told her, with her children. She has a 3-year-old child. She's a 3-year-old child, and then she has a deathly ill son. Yeah. So even though someone tried to kill your child, you don't need to go to King's Landing to go tell Ned. Like, what the fuck is gonna happen if you do? You know what I mean? Like, you send a letter, send a messenger. Like, what's the big reason that you need to abandon your home and your children to go tell Ned, look, someone tried to kill Bran with this dagger?
Because I think that's where the juxtaposition comes in and where the contradiction comes in. And this is really good storytelling because we value Arya, right? For the fact of she is a take action type of gal. She's the anti-Sansa, right? But then we despise Catelyn for leaving her children because she's taking action and saying, no, listen, shit ain't right.
I guess we would probably like it if any of her actions panned out for anything good.
Exactly. Like let's try to isolate it a little bit.
We do have the luxury of knowing what is going to happen.
Captain Hindsight.
Yeah, we have that. So, like, if anything panned out good, then yeah, we would love
Ned, we'd love everything, but it doesn't. So, but I can see her motivation. We get a very good insight into King's Landing here, and I had forgotten a lot of this. Admittedly, you're much more versed in the books than I am, but I had forgotten like how important it was that the city guard escorts them, right?
Yeah.
From Storm Dancer on, and let's remember just that we have world building within, because she talks about if she would have went with a different like boat, that it would have been slower.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so like there's world building. So your old
a ton of world building.
Yeah. So it's really injected in here and beautifully so. Like, it's like, oh, there's this monologue within Catelyn saying, man, if I would have, it's pretty much if I would have flown Southwest, I wouldn't have been there without a stop in Phoenix. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I could tell you, like, when I first read it, well, not when I can't tell you what I felt when I first read it, but this time rereading it, the way she describes the city, it reminded me of the Accursed Kings books. So I don't know if you've ever read them. A lot of people haven't read them, but they are like one of George's influences for the series, and they call it the original Game of Thrones. It's not a magical book. The novels are about French monarchies, but when I was reading the novels, I had noticed how like the Knights Templar and Jack and Hagar were like inspired by the two, but also like the city names like Street of Silk, Street of Steel, like that kind of thing that George has built with King's Landing was also in Accursed Kings in the novels. So like I like that, like having that familiarity.
Oh, that's awesome, because I've not heard of this series and I'm Wikipediaing it, people, as we speak. No, but this is awesome because I'm looking into this, because what we have here is we all know a Song of Ice and Fire really embodies and embraces the chivalric way, right?
Yeah.
That was much so the French way, not the Anglo-Saxon way, people. So this is, it says right here on the front page of Wikipedia, which I can see, American author George R. R. Martin called the Cursed Kings the original Game of Thrones. Wow. So yeah, no, I mean, because all attorneys and everything like that follows French chivalric ways.
Yeah.
Not English.
So I did like that about the chapter. And then we get like introductions to major characters like Varys, Littlefinger. And then this part irritates me so bad about Catelyn is that right before we meet Littlefinger, like she goes back in her thoughts and is thinking about Brandon Stark, her ex-fiance, almost killing him, and all of that. Like, I had begged Brandon to spare Peter's life. He let him off with a scar. Afterward, my father sent him away. I have not seen him since. So we have like, she in like a previous Ned chapter, I think, or a Catelyn chapter, I think it was Catelyn 2, she had this talk with Ned where she's like, you know, you don't know Robert anymore. He's not the same man. And I'm like, well, bitch, use your own advice when it comes to Littlefinger.
Well, here's what I'll say about this. And we see a semblance of this in the show, right? Right? Like we see that Ned overpowers Littlefinger once he sees him finally and says, you're a funny little man. I actually think it's a little bit more aggressive in this chapter, but I think that this just showcases that Catelyn doesn't see, because we have to understand why Catelyn believes or trusts Littlefinger. It's because she doesn't see him as a threat, and that's part of his ploy. He has tried to go blade for blade with a Stark. He has tried to do that. Now he is setting up what we now know to be Lannisters against Starks, right? Okay. And she doesn't see, this is a foolish little man. Yes, because she says he's clever, but he's not wise. So she considers Ned to be wise, but Ned essentially is just brawn, right? He is stronger. She's seen brawn beat brain time and time again in her life. So I think it's an important aspect of this chapter that she remembers what happened with Brandon, so we can better understand later on why she trusted such a jackal, right? Yeah. This hyena, this literal jackal. Like, this guy is such a shyster. Like, you might as well have a toothpick in his mouth and flip it a nickel in the corner.
Well, and it's because, like, I don't know, it's because she's stupid, but it's because like a big part of it is because like she has these values and Ned Stark has these values, and they project those values onto other people that don't have them.
Yeah.
And they don't know that. But I think it's dumb because like I never project my like do you project your values onto other people? I just always assume the worst about everybody.
I do. I'm always saying that I'm very surprised if somebody's a good person, because that is the exception. But this does kind of get into this Catanian ethics, and like I said, I wouldn't talk about before about love versus duty, and that you actually can't have love without a moral responsibility because it will all be subjective, and that she holds people to her standards. So she is a noble, right? She is Holster's eldest daughter. There was 2 sons, I believe, that died before. But also remember that her emotional disconnect from her father, in all fairness, she has a sympathetic plight, was always transferred over to Brendan Tully. Littlefinger's love for her was rejected both emotionally and physically through Brendan, but also Littlefinger thought he had sex with Catelyn, and then was brought to by the same person that Catelyn used to pretty much, spill her tea to, Brendan Tully, the Blackfish. He was like, he's always disposing of her emotional like excess, right? Like her, like what she's just putting away. Cause like you said, she holds everything to the standard that's not applicable, right? Yeah. Like Littlefinger should know his place, because Edmure is the one that gave him that title. Mm-hmm. Like he should just know his place, right? And we shouldn't project. But she's living in this falsehood because the times are changing. This is all about a systematic change, this whole story. So Littlefinger has risen quite prominently within this system that she is trying to accordingly adhere to, right? Like
Yeah.
she's like, oh, he shouldn't be able to do all this because first off, he got his ass beat, which he did, and he would again. But this isn't about getting an ass beating. This is about things are changing. It's a Song of Ice and Fire. So
Well,
like we understand why she is dismissive of his capabilities, I guess.
she says that she doesn't trust him though. Like
Mhm.
she says that, but then like she does at the same time. And one interesting thing was this quote. She's basically asking him, like, you know, how does Varys know I'm here, and why would he pick you to be the person to come and get me? And he was like, I was the obvious. Like he's saying, like, Stannis is gone, Barristan Selmy and Renly rode north, and he was like, I was the obvious choice. I was ever a friend to your sister Lysa. Varys knows that. And then she starts to say, does Varys know about... And then he cuts her off and said, Lord Varys knows everything except why you are here.
Yes.
So what is she asking him, does Lord Varys know about?
Well, because she is confused about why she is so known to be there other than her, I would say, veiled concern for Ned. Of course, she is concerned for Ned, but the real reason she is there is because she has an agenda to share information more than a concern, right? She's there to inform. So she wants to know. So what Littlefinger is doing is he's playing a useful role within her life to show her his worth. He's saying, Varys knows this.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's spilling tea essentially, you know, about Varys. So like,
but
it's
what
earning
was
her
she
trust.
about to ask him though? Like, does
He
Varys
cuts it
know?
off because he doesn't know is what I take from that. Like he doesn't know how Varys, because we all know.
I was like thinking, I was about to think, like, did she really fuck him?
Littlefinger?
Yeah, like
I
she have really? Because what was she gonna say? Does Varys know about us? And then he was like, Varys knows everything. Like he cut her off real quick.
I think there's a sentiment of that, but it's not as sexual as that. I think it's more of an intimate thing, like of like this very like, cause this is still a friend. This is somebody she's never met Varys, right?
Yeah.
And that he is given to her, and he's presented to her and described by her.
Mm-hmm.
I should say described, not given. In a very feminine way, right? A soft perfume touch. So what she looks at as strength and what prevails, because for all intents and purposes, what has prevailed in Catelyn's life? Strength, right? Brawn. So this is this perfumed, so like he comes upon in this feminine way, which is like you spoke about earlier, toxic masculinity is running the game here. It's the gambit. So he comes upon, like the spider does, you know, creeps, and he gets his way in there. So Littlefinger, I think, a little bit shows his hand. I don't know what she's asking there, but she's definitely diving to see, like, how honest are you being with me? Because listen, you had these people send these people for me. You had this premonition about me, supposedly. Like, I mean, she knew that he knew something like right away, so he's got spies somewhere. So how honest are you being with me? Are you working with me? And he kind of just like gives Varys as his example of loyalty.
Right.
So he cuts her off because he doesn't know the answer to that. Because I don't think he knows about the knife. I think that's the big question right here.
Yeah, it is. They don't really know why she's there. I mean, Varys knows about the knife,
but Littlefinger doesn't.
But he doesn't, right? And a big part of like Littlefinger, Catelyn, and Littlefinger's relationship is Littlefinger basically comes up with the story, fabricates the story about where the knife actually came from, and she never questions the story. Like she never questions it.
And we as readers know by this point, because of our Tyrion POVs, correct?
Yes.
This is for sure. So
Not
we know.
False. So we have the benefit of knowing what she doesn't know. But at the same time, she is a politically Southern ambition type of woman. So like at the same time, you have to question these things. Like these are things that you would question. You would not just take this and say, you know, okay, he said it's this person's, it has to be this person's.
Yeah.
After he just told you that Varys knows everything, and then Varys doesn't know whose knife this is.
Checkmate on Varys right there. Bam. Right there on Littlefinger, though. Like that is the way to play it, because that is what you're dealing with. Perfectly put. Because she's like, okay, so you're my insight into this city because I'm already uncomfortable that you called me to your brothel.
Right.
Like, I mean, not the best entrance, but I'm here because I already know all this and I'm here to protect you. And this person knows everything. And this person that you just said is the smartest person in the world just said, like, if somebody said, oh, Justin's the smartest person in the world, and I said, this person knows, and they said, Justin's stupid, you're gonna be like, oh, shit. Like, I'm like, oh, that backfired.
Like whiplash.
Yeah, uh-oh.
Like, yeah, like she doesn't even like process it. And I think part of it is just out of pure desperation to know like who tried to kill her son, that she doesn't even like, she more desperately wants an answer, no matter if the answer is right or wrong, or no matter if she could take the time, like if she could take the time to process what's going on, but she doesn't. Everything happens so fast and fluid, and she's going back home and then she bumps into Tyrion. So it's like she doesn't really have time to process everything.
She's reactionary.
Yeah, she's very reactionary when it comes to her kids. Also, I wanted to talk about Varys for a minute, because the way that Varys is described, his first description is, the man who stepped through the door was plump, perfumed, powdered, and hairless as an egg. Now, a lot of people think the perfumed seneschal that Quaithe warned Daenerys about is actually, well, a lot of people think it's the Green Grace in Marine, but I actually think that it is the Varys.
Well, there's a lot of like symbolism, as always, with this. He also cuts his finger on this and he spills blood, right? And the little bit we know about Varys at this point is he's in league with Illyrio, and we'll learn more to go. So if you have a Blackfire like conspiracy, like this leads to that. Like, yeah, symbolism in there shows that Varys has an agenda, because not only does he know more than Littlefinger, but for some reason there's this symbolic shedding of blood in this chapter.
And Varys is totally a Blackfire or some kind. He has Targaryen lineage. He was hairless as an egg. What other person do you know in a Song of Ice and Fire universe that is as hairless as an egg?
Let me get my Duncan Egg now.
Yeah.
Out and let me
Duncan Egg, yeah. Aegon, aka Egg. But not only just that, like his name, Varys, it sounds like Daenerys, Viserys, like all of those names end in Eris. And he's supposedly from Myr, and he shaves his head bald, and everyone is talking about like there's definitely like some kind of Blackfire thing going on with young Griff. So of course, if Varys is helping orchestrate that, then he has something to do with that. Like he has a motivation for it. And a lot of people will say, well, no, he's motivated because he wants the good of the realm. He wants the realm. Yeah. No, if he wanted the realm to be good, and then he would have let Rhaegar take power at Harrenhal.
Kevin wouldn't be killed. I have a whole litany of issues with that.
Kevin Lannister.
I don't want to get into it because that's a different stream that I was supposed to do, but I studied up on it, and trust me, yeah, not true. I don't think he's a Blackfire either, to be fair. I think this is like George leading us. I mean, I think that all the evidence is
gardening it, like, yeah. And he hasn't even decided yet, because I feel like that's the case with a lot of things. Absolutely. Like he plants all these seeds and then he just waters the one.
Yeah, like which one sprouts within him. Yeah, I agree. Like I don't think it's impossible. I think that like his reasons are within that construct, but yeah, this shedding of blood, you don't have this guy with this fragile hand, which I guess is a little bit premeditated right there. Like, well, his hands are soft, I guess he might, but I mean, he's a careful man, right? Mm-hmm. And then he cuts his finger on this knife.
Yeah.
Why is there's like, you don't trust me. I write something every week. It's terrible, but at the same time, you don't write it for no reason. So like he's talking, it's not like, I guess I'll have this fella cut his finger. No, it's for a reason. So whether it's to lead us down endless trail, I don't know. I would suspect that at this point. But yeah, there's definite symbolism for it, and that's still meaningful. Like I said, it's still very meaningful. Mm-hmm. Why would you put that in if you didn't want people to at least think about it, which just adds layers to the story. But Catelyn as well, we see her, and all she's been shown is brawn over brains. And so she thinks, oh, it'll be fine. He's no risk. So it's the perfect little, antagonist for her, Littlefinger. So I think at the same time, I'm not a fan of Catelyn because of the Jon thing, and also because of these mistakes that we have the benefit of hindsight on. But at the same time, during this chapter, we are introduced into the chess masters.
Yeah, that's the two. The two chess masters are definitely Littlefinger and Varys. And like, just real quick to talk about like Game of Thrones, the TV show, I was so mad that we didn't get to see them in like this final face off, like Littlefinger and Sansa's corner and Varys and Daenerys's corner, like facing off against each other. Like
it's like a boxer that doesn't answer the bell.
Yeah,
that's what it is. One guy like just keeps sitting.
It was such a missed opportunity because those are two of the best players in the Game of Thrones.
One is for the people, supposedly. We can put Varys, but supposedly, but this is what we could do. And then one is for their own personal, acceleration or benefit. And this is the ideals behind them, and you should have them face off. This is literally like these boxers and answer the 12th round. And it's such a missed opportunity. I don't agree with like the characterization of them. I think there's deeper layers, but at the same time, I want it. I want that fight.
But I think that, introducing them together in a chapter kind of puts you there where like, they're the same. You know what I mean? They're the same kind of person. Their motivations are similar, and here, meet them together, and you guys decide who's the good one, who's the bad one, or are they both equally fucked up?
In the dynamic, too, think about that, because Catelyn is going to be have this predisposition towards, Littlefinger, in this non-acceptance of his masculinity or prowess, whatever you want to call it. I mean, like, she doesn't think he's a threat, but you get to see the game played with Catelyn. This is why Catelyn's a constant perspective. I think she has does she have the most, even with Lady Stoneheart, POVs?
She has a lot. I don't know if she has the most.
But she has.
I think Daenerys or Jon or Tyrion. I think Tyrion has the most.
But not the most. What I'm saying is she's in the top 5, I think.
Yeah, she is.
So
even being gone 2 books.
Exactly. So let's look at the opportunity within that. So what the opportunity here is, the game is being played in front of us. And you can't play the game from Varys' POV. You can't do it from Littlefinger. That's why those don't exist. You got to play it from her.
Yeah, that you have to play it from the little lamb that's going to slaughter. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I love that they're introduced together. And I love that Catelyn is so weary, I would say, of Varys. Like, he makes her so uneasy. So she says, Varys was lord of nothing but the spider web, the master of nothing but whispers. The eunuch spread his soft hands. One more than that, I hope, sweet lady. I have great esteem for your husband, our new hand, and I know we do both love King Robert. Yes, she was forced to say, for a certainty. Never has a king been so loved as our Robert, quipped Littlefinger. He smiled slyly, at least in Lord Varys's hearing. And then she goes on to say that she doesn't trust Littlefinger, and she doesn't trust Varys even more, when it's really, she shouldn't trust either one of them.
But also, again, it's almost like there's that third party. She is fond of Littlefinger from childhood, even with, obviously, she never respected him. So there's like this anticipation of pretty much nothing from him.
He wasn't good enough for her, and he wasn't in childhood. He wasn't good enough for her.
She saw him make a claim. She saw him make a move, and this is where he made the decision to never make that mistake again. He made that move against Brandon, right? Mm-hmm. So she looks at him and she's like, if this fool is gonna be doing something shady, she knows, she has an experience with that. She knows how he would go about it in her mind, meaning he's going to just go right against it, right? Because he had that brawn back then, that child mentality, I guess, that aggressiveness. He didn't have that. It's always, he's clever, but he's wise, is what she says. Yeah. So she figures now she doesn't trust Varys, but I think because she doesn't trust Varys, maybe it's too convoluted, my thoughts, but at the same time, I think it's because she thinks that Varys is putting on a show for Littlefinger as well, which he is. Of course. So it comes from her. It's not so much of a distrust of Littlefinger. It's this whole charade, doesn't mean much because it's put on for an audience.
Yeah.
That's what I take from it.
And then like when the chapter, he basically ends the chapter by telling her that it was Tyrion and the blade originally belonged to him, and he bet that Jaime Lannister would unhorse Sir Loras Tyrell. And that's how he lost the blade to Tyrion. So
discredited all across the board, unless you want to go off of season 8 intellect of Tyrion. I mean, pretty stupid.
So we know as the reader that it wasn't Tyrion. And then Tyrion later will tell her, like, you know, I don't bet against my family.
Also, I don't like bet like something that's symbolic to me and like inherently traits to me in a gamble that I'm going to use in some type of gambit.
Yeah.
Down the line, because I'm just not straight stupid. But yeah, like we know not to trust, but I think a little bit is revealed about the past, but also like Ned's like, you know, situation with her. So I think this is a valuable chapter and it's very enticing. There's world building, but also, I mean, like for you theory people, like we talked in the last podcast I did with you, like that was like the budding of so many theories, right?
Yeah.
But I think this one really has Varys's, I'd say Blackfire theory that sprouts from this. And I would say the value in this as well, and I mean, please agree because you're the one that knows more, is also though the whole aspect of Bran's visions.
Yeah.
It's only just a little mention though, but it's there.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, like that's so interesting about A Song of Ice and Fire is that each chapter kind of begins and ends on like this cliffhanger, but the previous chapter is still tied into it. So like we get Bran seeing Catelyn in his coma dream, and then in this chapter we get Catelyn being in the position she was in Bran's coma dream, and then the next chapter, and this chapter ends with Tyrion Lannister being named as the one that killed or that tried to he was named as the one whose knife it is that tried to have Bran killed. And then we know, and Catelyn should know, that Tyrion is not an idiot, and like her first intuition was, what kind of idiot, you know, would arm a person with their own dagger? Like it makes, or that's Tyrion's intuition. Sorry, backtrack that. But the next chapter it goes into Tyrion at the wall with Jon.
And that's what a lot of people say, and even George has said this, that A Game of Thrones, meaning A Son of Ice and Fire, was the most adapted series. This is where it's my, you know, insight as somebody that enjoys screenwriting and the formulaic way of screenwriting. This is what you just described perfectly as an act break, right? Of anticipation left, a cliffhanger.
Definitely, an act break. Yeah.
His POVs work very, very well for that. And George was a screenwriter, worked for Beauty and the Beast. He worked for Twilight Zone and Max Headburn, whatever that was. But yeah, though he had that experience and he wrote this, and it definitely has that visual appeal to it, or at least that cadence, meaning like the rhythm to it. Yeah. But the thing I'd say about Catelyn is, I think by the end of the next chapter, and that'll be with somebody else, they'll speak much more proficiently on it, she pretty much knows, but she knows, right? Like that by the time Liza's call, she wants to go against it. Yeah. Right? Like she buy this, like she buys it for the moment because she buys into the formulaic way in which they work.
But she doesn't learn from it, and that's what I talk about with a lot of different characters. Like most of the young characters, they learn from their mistakes. Like they make these big mistakes and then they learn from them, they change, they grow. It's like a coming of an age type of situation that's going on with all of the characters. But then with like Sansa, I don't like, for me personally, being a docile woman is not strength, like in my own life. So, but I wouldn't look at a woman that is being docile like, oh, she's a weak bitch. I wouldn't be like that. But at the same time, for me and what I relate to, I couldn't be like that. So when people say, oh, like Sansa is the most realistic woman of the real world, I'm like, bitch, no. Why? Because why isn't Daenerys more realistic as a like a compassionate person that's still gonna do what she has to do? No, I mean, I guess maybe people don't relate to her because she has dragons and she's like royalty, so I get it. But at the same time, it's like the inner thoughts of her are present in a lot of young women.
Absolutely. And I agree with you on that Dany aspect. So here's the thing, is that first off, as a woman in contemporary times, you will not be able to relate in that show's progress to a woman depicted in feudalistic times, right? As a man should not be able to relate. If I relate to Jaime Lannister, I'm fucked. But you know what I mean? And I love Jaime.
But you can relate to aspects of Jaime Lannister. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like you could relate, like, I don't know what you can personally relate to, but even if you didn't push a kid out the window and you're not like some...
I can relate to people not appreciating me.
Right. Not being appreciated. You could relate to like his
going against
inner
the grain.
struggle, his inner struggles, going against the grain. Like there are different character aspects of different people. Like I can relate to Sansa's want for like a happy ever ending story. Like everyone, well, not everyone, not gonna like over, like I want that. Like I want a Prince Charming. Most young girls do. Most women want a Prince Charming or a Princess Charming.
But you want to be happy is what that means.
You want to be happy. So I can relate to that, but I can't relate to the foolishness. Like I would never like sell my dad out or my sister out to get this happiness. You know what I mean?
So this is the what I was going at, is that Dany goes against the grain much more. So if you look at like who went outside of the construct of the time more, you would say Dany, and I would say, I guess not you, I won't make a blanket statement. I will say Dany fights against it, but also Dany was raised outside of the construct, meaning she has been said to have this royal lineage, right? She's been raised with that. Now, Sansa's lived within the construct, meaning she has got to upkeep the status quo. A happy Sansa means a happy realm. That's what she's been taught. A happy Dany means a happy realm. The way in which that happiness and that success happens is differently. One, Sansa is the status quo, so we tend to dislike her more because the status quo, as we know, is not great. We tend to like Dany better because she's going outside of the box, because we get to see through Sansa what the status quo is, which is what? Not ideal, right? Like lushing up to Joffrey and all this like lovey-dovey with people that are terrible. So we definitely see more strength within Dany, and we see her as breaking more boundaries. But still, if you look at it in a certain moral construct, you would say that Dany actually is still following a pattern. I'm not dismissing anything or taking anything away from her, but she has an outsider's view from the get-go. She's not an insider. Sansa is trying, because in her mind, in what she's been taught, if she marries Joffrey, everybody's going to be happy. So we have all these people on their own personal arcs, and if you can isolate them, here's the thing though, you shouldn't feel shame for hating on Catelyn. And I'm not
you
gonna
shouldn't.
ship her. Yeah, why would you?
Any character that you don't like, you just don't like them, like that's fine. And any character that you do like, if someone else doesn't like them, it's fine. Like it doesn't like your feelings are valid about a character, my feelings are valid. Like everybody has very personal reasons why they relate to characters and why they don't. So like
emotions are a fact.
Yeah, emotion, especially when you're passionate about a story. Like okay, like if I'm just watching like, I don't know, some random show on TV, I might not care about the characters, because I care about it so much. And it's a big part of, you know, like what I do as far as YouTube. I'm passionate about it, and it comes through.
And you were always passionate about it because it's a story that connected you. I don't give a shit about the King of Queens. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's a decent sitcom. Don't care for it that much. Don't care if he's the King of Queens. I know he's not. He's a garbage man or UPS, whatever it is. It speaks to George's worth. And you shouldn't shit on other people or other characters, because Sansa, if you isolate it, you will see the virtue in her ways. Catelyn, you will. But that doesn't mean that what you feel is unjust. Me. He didn't write these people to be all chummy. It wasn't like everybody like these guys, let me put them in. No, It was like, let's make some dynamic, layered characters, and people are going to have debates about. But we'll be on the internet. We'll have podcasts. It's all about that actual emotion that seeps through. So it's like, of course, we're pissed off at Sansa. Would we be as pissed if we didn't see a Dany? And would we be as enthralled with Dany if we didn't see a Sansa? You gotta see how they work off of each other as well. We don't appreciate these strengths without seeing the weaknesses of others. And we don't see the folly and the way without the strengths of others as well. So it's both ways. It is what it is.
So
Catelyn sucks. I mean, Catelyn does suck.
Yeah, Catelyn's
but her life sucks.
Catelyn's not fun. She's not a fun character. She's a fun police. That was Catelyn 4. Sorry that we went off on a tangent, but it happens because these aren't scripted podcasts. These are two friends sitting down to talk about a specific A Song of Ice and Fire chapter. And before we get out of here, I just wanted to remind you, we will be streaming. Justin will be producing the stream every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know a lot of people that watch my channel aren't in the United States, and we tried to pick a time that would work for everyone. But do you want to let them know where they can find you at?
Yeah, Top Shelf Fandom. And definitely, I think 2 p.m. right now is a good time Eastern. And these streams will be presented in a way for you guys that you can enjoy them after the fact. The engagement will definitely be necessary, and definitely we will embrace it. But at the same time, you're going to be able to watch this, and this will be informative. This will be entertaining. And I can't think of a better person to work with than Gray Area, because not only she is a lovely person, but she's the most knowledgeable and passionate person. And that's what you want. And she's open to others' opinions. And we want to hear your guys' opinions. And we've got a road up to the House of Dragon that we are going to pave for you. We are going to turn these roads of gravel into, I don't know, what's better than gravel? I guess cement.
Dragon.
Oh, Obsidian roads. I don't know what that does to your tires, people, but yeah, get on it. Yeah, no, so I can't be more happy to be a part of it. I can't be more happy to join you for a second time on this podcast that reinvigorated me. This is like my 5-hour energy for A Song of Ice and Fire.
I'm your Red Bull, bruh. Your Red Bull. But yes, our streams are going to be so in depth with knowledge, but it's not going to be like a lecture. It's not going to be class or none of that. Like you guys already know how I'm going to carry it. But I want to thank you for coming on, Justin, and I will see you guys next week.